So now we get into this idea of like generational and historical trauma, right? So when we talk about this stuff, we're talking about more than just the stories. It's also about the lived experiences of our ancestors that can really continue to shape who we are. You know, they shape our emotional, our mental, our physical well being that we experience today, or honestly, lack thereof. If you are a person that has seen your parents working three, four jobs, for the longest, that's what you start to believe you need to do. It's like you become conditioned to believe that life is only lived if you're working two or three jobs. That's what it takes, right? So science calls this epigenetics. And in that, this is where, extreme stress or trauma changes how certain genes are expressed and how those genes are passed down. So I studied science in school, and I sometimes joke with people like, this is where I geek out because people do not understand that you can actually change your DNA by experiencing trauma. Now, granted, it's not like, oh, I just had one experience and then bam, your DNA is completely different. But epigenetics tells us that if you are repeatedly experiencing extreme stress, if you're experiencing all kinds of trauma, and we talked about the big T traumas, the little T traumas the last time we met, right? But just by pure nature of repeatedly experiencing trauma, experiencing stressful events, you change your genes. And then the hard part about that is that these are these are the same genes that we are passing down to our kids. The same genes that we are passing down from generation to generation. So if I'm a parent and I've experienced stress and trauma and all of these, ups and downs, and now my DNA, my very genetical makeup is different. And then I go have children. I'm like, here's my husband. He's also experienced trauma. The conditions in Nigeria are not the best. So we know he's had some traumatic experiences as well. And we're going to take his DNA that has been compromised and take my DNA that has been compromised, and we're going to go make a baby. Like, hello, world, here's a child that has, compromised DNA. Go be successful, child. Realistically, we're not setting our children up for success. But because we don't know this, because we don't study this, because we don't openly talk about this, we put our kids out into the world and then we ask them to go face all these challenges with the very genes that we gave them that already was missing some things because of the experiences that we had that we didn't heal. So I say this because, as you heard me mention before, the same way that we pass down wealth, we pass down property, like Nigerians that will build in the village, and you're building because you want to pass that down to your children when they grow up, and you pass. Well, why aren't you passing down the same healing? Why don't you heal before you have your children so that the genetics that you're passing on to them is complete, it's full, it's healthy? So now when your child goes out into the world, there's no way that they're going to live life and not experience something that's going to be distressing for them. But if they do, they will still have a complete system, a fully complete system to work out of, to work from. So in the African context, we really want to remember that, like, the deep varied histories, colonialism, its long shadow, the forced migration, the civil wars, the apartheid, the systemic depression, like all of these different things, these events disrupted families, they disrupted communities, and that a lot of the cultural practices that were happening around that time, in many cases, they created patterns of silence and avoidance. Even I'm not a political person, so please don't hate me for referencing this. I'm only going off of what I've seen on the news. But I know that there was a period of time that people were talking about Biafra, bring Biafra back, bring Biafra back. They're talking about the sit at home, non-Bikano, all these different things that are happening. If you are growing up in this kind of time where you're like, okay, all of this is happening, what do I make sense of this? It's a lot to manage. If you were a child or even an adult during the Biafran War, then that affected your DNA. That affected you. How you see the world now, it's shaped that. So I say this because in the African context, it does impact families. It does impact people. It impacts communities. And if we look at how we can heal and pass that and share that with others, it'll put us in a different space altogether. So the result is, we have these norms that we don't talk about it. It's this emotional suppression that often becomes, part of the family system. But our goal as healers, as people who do this work, as people who touch the work in some way, shape, or form, maybe even the person that's going to bring this work back into your own families, your goal is to jumpstart the engine that allows people to heal so we can break the negative cycle of trauma that continues to pass down from generation to generation. And that becomes what we know as culture or tradition.